Hello, and thank you for joining. My name is Chrissy Hodges, and I am the Executive Director and founder of OCD Gamechangers, which is a nonprofit whose mission is to connect people who have OCD from around the world, also to elevate individuals, therapists, advocates, families, people that are doing innovative projects to help reach our community and show that there is help and hope. We have a lot of other initiatives, but I don't want to talk about OCD Gamechangers today. I want to get right to it. So the series that we started a few weeks ago is called Monday Mavericks. Yay! So this is basically every other week we bring on someone in the OCD community that's doing a lot of kick-ass stuff and that we want to give a platform to and help you get to know what they're doing. So a little bit quickly about me. I am a certified peer support specialist in the state of Colorado. I work with people worldwide to help support them and connect them to therapists and resources that help with OCD. I'm the author of Pure OCD, The Invisible Side of Obsessive Compulsive Disorder, and I am the founder and executive director of OCD Gamechangers. So without further ado, Miss Patricia.
Well, here is Miss Patricia.
Patricia. Well, I introduced her to my husband earlier, and he tried to do it with an accent, and it was horrific. So, Patricia. Is that correct? Patricia.
You say it perfectly. It's all good. I take it.
Dr. Z.
That's my full name. My full name is Patricia Esperanza Zurita Oña. But it's really long, it's hard to remember, and you are rolling your tongues a lot. So that's why my clients gave me the nickname Dr. Z.
There you go. That's way easier.
Well,
Tell us a little bit about who you are. Thank you for being here, by the way.
Well, first I want to say thank you so much for having me. I am super grateful you thought about me for this series. And I'm really appreciative of the space you're giving me. In terms of what I do these days, I am located in the Bay Area in California. I run my practice that is called the East Bay Behavior Therapy Center, and we specialize in all hardcore behavioral stuff. We have been doing, maybe the last 7 or 8 years, we have been running an intensive treatment through the whole year for clients dealing with OCD or any form of anxiety. And that's really a highlight of our work. I absolutely love it to pieces. And the last couple of years, I have thought a lot about how we can help people to approach what they're scared of, given that facing our fears, it's not easy. It's hard, right?
It's not easy.
No.
It's not easy.
Super hard. So I think the last 2 workbooks that I have worked on are basically focusing on how to apply acceptance and commitment therapy, ACT, and exposure response prevention skills together to face obsessions. And those, I think one of the books that's already out is, do I have it here? I don't think I do. But the other book is going to be released soon, right? So I've been working on those projects for the last couple of years. Super excited. They're just coming to
What's the name of your book?
It's called the ACT Workbook for Teens with OCD.
Okay.
Thank you.
Keep going.
And the second one is Living Act Beyond OCD, and that's for adults. Yeah, there we go. There we go. All of them are showing how you can blend ACT skills with exposure response prevention. I think at the core, those 2 books are showing how we can relate in a different way to our mind, to our thinking, and to all the messages we have received about fears, anxieties, and worries. So I have been very busy doing that.
So I have a question for you that I think a lot of people have. Tell me what, we always hear the gold standard of treatment for OCD is ERP. And so then when we hear things like acceptance commitment therapy, ACT, we go, oh, wait. I don't want to do that because that's not going to help. It's not going to make me better. So tell us a little bit about ACT. What is the approach? What is it like for people? Whatever information you could give us to help us understand how it treats OCD.
Yeah, thank you so much. That's a beautiful question. I think over the last 14 years, there has been a lot of studies, a lot of randomized clinical trials showing actually how ACT and ERP are effective for treating OCD and different forms of anxiety. So I think that research has been very clear that ACT is also an effective intervention for treating OCD. Now, the way that I think about this is that ACT by nature is already an exposure model, because within ACT, just as the model, we're asking a person, we're asking all of us to get in touch with the things that are hard for us, with all the yucky stuff that comes under my skin when I'm doing what is important to me, right? So as a model, ACT by itself is exposure. And when you're adding the ERP piece, it's not something different, right? It's all what is happening is you are doing more targeted exposure. You're helping people to approach what matters to them based on their values. And when they're approaching that as a situation, an activity, you're going to be helping people to develop a new relationship with the sensations, with the thoughts, with the urges to do a compulsion. So more than seeing them as two different things, I think they're actually embedded with each other. You cannot do exposure without learning to accept and sit with what shows up. You cannot do ACT without doing exposure, right? So they actually, I think, intertwined. It just happens that now we have a lot of research showing that they work, and people, I think, will benefit from knowing that it's not different than ERP. It's just augmenting ERP with different skills.
Okay. So I have an off-topic question. I hope this isn't just bringing things on you.
It's okay. Let's go for it. I love the preview. This is an off-topic question.
I know. Sorry. You can say pass if you want to, because this is way more about like what this show is about is your work, and I'm about to get deep.
Oh.
So. But I'm sure this question is relevant for ACT, because I know that for myself, I get a lot of people who are asking questions about ACT. I'm really careful about who I send people to, and in regards to whether they're knowledgeable about both ACT and ERP. So, okay, here we go.
There we go.
Acceptance commitment therapy. So a lot of times people who have really heavy themes, so sexual, violent, intrusive thoughts, scrupulosity, they see the word acceptance and they want to run, because they don't want to accept, like, we always say, okay, accept the thoughts.
Yeah.
That's really difficult for someone who's dealing with pedophilia theme or harm or murder or things like that. And so it becomes this resistance to want to get therapy, because they don't want to accept that those thoughts are okay. Like at the end of the day, nobody wants to say, yay, pedophilia. Like nobody. No. But so this is a long question. Hold on.
So good.
I often refer people who have those heavy themes to therapists who can do acceptance commitment therapy, because it's a good way to hold on to your values while you're doing the exposures. It's like the softer side of ERP, although you're still doing the ERP. So what would you say to someone who is like, I'm scared to do therapy, I'm scared to do acceptance commitment therapy because I don't want to accept that these things are okay? What are your thoughts?
Yeah, thank you so much for that question.
Okay, good. I hope it wasn't just like out of the blue.
No, I love it. And in fact, this morning I got a couple of emails from people asking that question in terms of, I have these pedophile obsessions and I go into figuring out constantly, and I'm scanning what I'm feeling, right? It has been really hard to handle my compulsion, my mental compulsion, right? One thing I can say is that as a person that has been trained in both models, right? As a person that I breathe and live behaviorist, I mean it, right? Like I don't know the way of looking at the world without understanding human behavior and looking what reinforces and what helps to generalize certain behaviors. I think the beauty that acceptance and commitment therapy adds is that we don't tell you to do things. We invite you to look at your experience, right? When we think about acceptance, it's a really abstract thing, right? Or when we,
yes.
sometimes we say sit with. What do we mean by that?
Right? Yes, thank you. Yes.
That, right? So my clients usually they say, doctors, what do you mean by that, right?
Yes, I think that.
Yeah, me too. I'm like, what do we mean by that, right? So I think what I can tell you is that we do have different exercises that we practice with clients to help them to learn from their experience. And there is a difference when you are fighting in your mind, when you are judging your thoughts, when you're judging your thinking, versus when you're learning to have it and to notice how it feels, right? So I think more than telling people you have to accept this, we have different exercises, more experiential exercises to let people to notice the difference when you're powering through things versus when you're making a choice to open up and see how it feels and what shows up. So I think the other layer of the response is that within ACT, fundamentally, I think we're helping clients really to develop a new relationship with thinking. This idea of not taking our mind seriously, it's very counterintuitive, right? It's really...
Yes, absolutely.
Right? We have been told that whatever we think, it's the truth. Whatever we think, that's how it is. The challenge is that our mind is a content generating machine. It's all the time showing up all types of content, 24 hours, 7 days a week, no vacations. And the mind is also a pattern making machine on the sense that it's all the time creating patterns of thinking, patterns of behaving, right? So if we learn to look at our mind as a device that has a life on its own, and I learn to watch it for what it is versus taking it very seriously, I will be developing a new relationship with my thinking, with my mind, right? Mm-hmm. So I think having that frame will make it more... maybe will make it more accessible for people to practice this idea of sitting with the thoughts or noticing the thoughts, right? Mm-hmm. Otherwise, if I go to therapy and my therapist, the first session tells me, well, all what you have to do is accept the thoughts. I'm like, God, right? What do you mean by that?
Yes, yes.
Right? I think,
yes.
So I think there is a rhythm that many times a rhythm and a context that you create to facilitate this work that is more experiential, right? But again, I think telling people the first session, yeah, it's all about accepting, that really comes here and goes there for clients. And if I were in those shoes, I would be like, what do you mean by that? What's this thing, right?
It's terrifying.
It's super scary.
Yes.
I think ACT creates the frame to facing that and experiencing what really means to accept by experience, not by talking about it, right? So we do have different exercises to help people to notice when they are fighting, when they're judging their thoughts, right? When they're tensing their bodies versus when you are consciously and intentionally maybe relaxing a little bit, right? Distressing a little bit. So I think it amplifies how you can do any type of acceptance-based work in the room.
Great.
That was a long response. I do apologize.
I think it's so helpful though, because to me, I understand how ACT works, but I also hear so much how people are really terrified to think that the solution is to accept things or sit with thoughts. Like, people don't understand that. I know it takes practice, and I know, in working with a therapist, but I really appreciate you answering that on this show that should be all about what you're doing.
And you're so kind. If I can add something else, another thing that I like to share with my clients is that I teach my clients to how do I say this? So I think many times we have to learn to date our mind. We have to stop falling, in love with our mind, right? Sometimes we have these dating ways, that are not so helpful. So I think there is one ruling thought that I hear a lot, that it's because I think so, it makes me stop, right? Or if I have this thought a lot, means that there is something important about it. But I think when you are developing a new relationship with your mind, it's like you're learning to date your mind in a different way a little bit.
Yes.
So we have to stop falling, blindly in love with our mind, right? We just have to take a look at a stuff that has a life on its own.
Right. I love that you said, I love what you said earlier, that we just blindly accept that if we think something, it's just the reality. And I think that those of us that struggle with OCD, sorry, I'm tongue-tied. Those of us that struggle with OCD, that's so hard to let go of. It's so hard to believe that your mind can be telling you something that isn't real. And so I appreciate that. And in moving into, before we get into all the things that you're doing now and that you're going to do, tell us how you got into, all behavioral treatment and how you became passionate about treating people in our community.
Thank you for the question. That's, I think I'm a dinosaur in some way, because I have been response goes back to a long time ago. It's true. I think I got into psychology through philosophy, actually. I was very interested in reading all these existential philosophers. And that was the path that took me into reading more about behaviorism. And then my undergrad in Bolivia, in South America, where I am from, was heavily focused in cognitive psychology. And I was doing a lot of that, a lot of behavioral stuff there, right? Parenting and families. But I think my first year of undergraduate school, it was mandatory that you have to go to do psychoanalysis. So you have to be for 1 year mandated to go psychoanalysis every single week.
Yeah.
And it was one of those experiences that it created a different flavor for me, because I remember every Friday I used to go to sit in this office with a guy that barely talked to me, barely moved his face, barely blink an eye, right? When I go there like a blink, it's like, oh my gosh. I was really doing that for 12 months because I was part of the program. And it wasn't fun. I hated it with passion. It was just so hard to make sense of that. But with that experience, I think there was more consolidation of the idea that this is not how I look at the world. This is not how I understand people's behaviors. And then I met this other instructor who was trained by Albert Bandura, one of the big behaviorists in Mexico. So he was that behaviorist person. So I started collaborating with him, in different projects. I was his TA. So I think with that, I learned that behaviorist is actually a very multiculturally sensitive approach, on the sense that we hold our back, we do our best to put ourselves in the shoes of another person, right? You really try to understand the world from that person's experience, how they think, how they feel, how they sense. So I don't have the experience of behaviorists being these uptight things that you're just going to be doing logs. We certainly keep track of behaviors, but the process of, I think, becoming a behaviorist for me is starting from that. It's a very, I think, it's a very respectful process when you're trying to understand a person's experience from their shoes. When we're asking what's enough for you when you do that, when you have that thought. And then, this is a very long response.
You're fine. We're good.
And I think after that, for grad school, I worked with my mentor, and my mentor is extremely passionate about working with emotion regulation problems, more what I call, some people are more like super feelers, right? They feel a lot, too much, too quick, too soon. As instead of having a dial, they may have a switch that goes on and off. So I collaborated with him on that. It's still very behaviorally oriented. But I think my passion has been always working with fear-based struggles. Because I'm coming from a family with a collection of fears. I have a collection of fears myself, and blending that with behaviorists, it really allowed me to approach life in a different way. So I think little by little, right, my passion was always there. I think with time, I found a setting where I can capitalize that. And that's why I ended up doing what I'm doing these days. And I started doing intensive treatments because of my clients' request. I used to do that only during the summer when I start my practice, but it's my clients who say, no, Dr. Z, we need to have more of this. So we start doing more of that, right? I think to me, behavior is one of the most multiculturally appropriate frames that you can hold to understand a person's behavior. And it can be done with so much caring and so compassion, because times have changed. Behaviorists were not necessarily very serious and uptight. It's important for me to bring that touch, also the personal touch.
I love that. Behavior is the multicultural approach. I love it. I love that, because it's so true. It's behavior is the enemy, and it's also the friend.
No.
Behavior is the ailment, and it's also the cure.
I know. It's very interesting, right? You usually ask my clients, right, what are the things you have heard about behaviorally oriented therapies? And they say, well, it's all about the logs and it's all about reinforcement. I think I know for myself, I don't know how to understand human behavior without understanding antecedents, what happens before and what are the consequences. But also I think we understand our history, and our history is the family we're coming from, all the messages we have received about fears, worries, and anxieties, the culture that we grow up with, our family environment. So I think these days, the times have changed in which being a behaviorist, it really means that you are understanding a person's experience with a touch of caring and compassion. So I think I like to just clarify that.
Yes, absolutely. And I think that's what I love about ACT. And I've never gone through ACT actually, but just Jamie Valdez has told me a lot about ACT. She's another therapist in Boston, and I know she uses it a lot. So I've just learned a lot from her and other therapists, Ashley Annisted, who use it. And it just feels like ERP is great. And I'm not knocking ERP at all, but ACT is such a compassionate approach to something that's so scary for people. ERP is wonderful therapy, but it's super challenging. And it's also, when you're really dealing with some of those heavy themes, it can be scary. And so ACT is such a compassionate, sensitive approach to something that still gets the same results.
I appreciate your sharing that, on the sense that it makes a huge difference to ask our clients to hold a knife when they, if they have fears about harming their baby, right? Let's say that one exposure could be holding a knife on one hand and holding your baby on your lap. It's very different if I ask my clients, if you decide to hold that knife and you have your baby on the other side, in which way that's going to be helpful to you in your life? Is that going to help you to be the mom you want to be? If we do that exposure, what is that in the service of? So the conversation is very different, right? That why we're approaching what is scared of and how we're going to do it. Are we going to go to power through and just do it? Or we're going to let to develop some noticing of what's showing up, right? Some curious look of what's happening under my skin when I'm doing that exposure.
Yeah. Oh, that's great. Thank you for clarifying all this. I think it's something people really want to know and want to hear about. And so I appreciate you taking the time to talk about that. I do want to get to all the things that you're doing. So you have written workbooks. Yay. But let's talk about your podcast. So you just recently had a podcast that has just begun.
Yes.
I know what it's about, but you out there don't know yet. And so be very excited to hear, because it's awesome. Let us know. Tell us about the podcast.
Thank you for asking. The name of the podcast is Playing It Safe. And here comes Patricia sharing a story again, right? That's what it comes. So here's the idea. One of the things that I encountered in my work over the years is that somehow we have created this artificial division between people who have a diagnosis, people that don't. The challenge is that I don't think that's consistent with human experience, on the sense that we all experience fear. I think about fear more as a process, not as something either I have it or I don't, right? I think that through our life, we do have many moments in which we experience fear. Sometimes we handle that effectively because we have the tools and we have the skills. Other times we don't, and we develop maybe some patterns of behaving ineffectively. So what I wanted to create is something that deconstruct this idea, right? That there are two different groups of people, when in fact it's human experience to be afraid, to be scared. And the other thing that is also human behavior is that we are not wired to sit with discomfort, right? It's not that when I see a spider, I'm super excited to be anxious and afraid. No. I'm like, get me out of here, right?
Yes.
Or if I'm afraid of taking the elevator, I don't say I'm super excited to have a panic attack in the elevator. Right? I am scared and I want to get out. I actually will say, no, I'm taking the stairs. I'm not going camping because I don't want to see spiders. The reason why this is important, because when we get scared and our brain goes into this overworking mode, we are going to play it safe. We are either going to avoid and escape, or do a compulsion. That's not necessarily bad. It's adaptive, right? Like, look, with the pandemic we're doing. The question is, how often do we do it? Is it how it works in my life? And is it blocking me from being the person I am meant to be, right?
What is it preventing?
That's right.
Yes.
Idea. So I think that's the background with the name. Playing it safe is another way of referring to all the safety-seeking behaviors that we all do. So my take is that because we all experience fear, playing it safe is the norm, not the exception. But we all have to learn when it works and helps me to expand my life, and when it's narrowing my life and it's taking me far away from who I want to be. And the last thing is that it's very, I think, fear-based responses don't travel in isolation, but they travel in clusters. What I mean by that is that if I'm afraid of taking an elevator, it's also possible that I am afraid of choosing the wrong partner, or I may be afraid of making a poor financial decision. I'm also afraid of public speaking. So this is why, if you think about this, in different communities, you will hear these clients say, and my clients say that, and I relate to that, in which, well, I have OCD and I have social anxiety, or I have social anxiety and also have panic disorder. I don't think that's coincidence. What we have is that fear-based responses get easily generalized, right? So with a podcast, what I'm trying to show is that experiencing fear is natural. Playing it safe, it's human behavior, but we have to check how we do it and how it works. But also fear-based responses, they really don't show up in our life individually. If I think about my own life, there's a collection of fears that I have, and they change and they shift with age or where I go, right? So the podcast, that's why the podcast is really about teaching skills and insight and interviews to anyone who is stuck with any form of anxieties, worries, fears, and obsessions, and maybe is doing some ineffective playing safe actions, right? But to show that we all get scared, we all play it safe. Let's check and let's learn some tools to get unstuck.
I love that, because fear it's a universal language.
Yes.
So we don't just say someone has OCD or they have anxiety and all of a sudden they're over here in the fear zone. Everybody's in the fear zone.
Yes.
It's kind of like, how well are we masking it to the world? So with that said, who's your ideal guest for the podcast?
Thank you so much for asking that. Because I love that question. So the podcast, how I am structuring, every 10 episodes, they're going to be focused on a different playing it safe behavior. The first one I am starting is perfectionist, right? When we actually go into trying to get things right and perfect, right? And we get consumed by that. We cannot let things go. So I am trying to interview any person who has a story to share and has some skills and tips to share with people. For example, I have interviewed, some writers, people who has stuck with perfectionistic behaviors. I have a surgeon who, when you are performing a surgery, there is certain position you have to have. How do you handle that? How do you know that it's ready? You can go, right? Mechanics, if people are working on mechanics, they have to be careful when they're working on a car, right? But any person that has a story to share and has some skills that have worked for them, I welcome that. I think I want to make the podcast as something inclusive to normalize again that we all get scared. And we just have to learn the skills to handle effectively and be the best version of ourselves.
Awesome. So where can people find your podcast?
Ooh, so here's the name of the website.
Okay, I'm ready.
It's playingitsafe.zone.
Got what?
Zone, Z-O-N-E.
Oh, playing it. Okay.
Yes, exactly as you say. Like we all are in like the fear zone.
Is that right?
You got it. You got it.
Excellent. Okay, well, everybody go check out her podcast. I want to check it out too. Lastly, before we wrap up, I know you have an online course coming up. Do you want to tell us a little bit about that?
Sure. Thank you for asking about it. This has been my baby project in last year. I'm super excited. Sadly, because we had a pandemic and we have all, our whole world has reshaped, and that included I have to put that on pause for a couple of months. But one of the things that has been happening the last couple of years, that every time that I'm doing the work with my clients, or when I'm doing some teachings, I always get a question: where can I get more resources? And there are hundreds of books reading about ACT, right? And they're beautifully written. But I am more interested in creating something in which people have a different experience, in which we can get people through the process of learning acting skills, learning exposure skills, and facing their fears, right? So the online class basically is going to be an integration of having recorded sessions, and I am going to have live sessions with my clients for 8 weeks. The whole curriculum is 8 weeks. There is a whole workbook for that, exclusively for that, with extra material that I have added. And the idea is that while people watch this, let's say these recorded webinars, they're also going to have a weekly face-to-face contact with me, right? So it's going to be the combo that I'm creating. Right. Hopefully, I will let you know definitely when it's ready. I just have to do process because of the pandemic, but it's really, I think, one of the things that it speaks to my heart a lot, right? I can't wait to just say that the class is ready.
And this class would be for anybody?
Yeah, for any person.
Okay, excellent.
Yeah, so I think that is, thank you for clarifying. A lot of therapists are asking about this. If a clinician wants to take the class, that's fine, but the class is targeted for a person that is stuck dealing with OCD. So that what I am talking about, it's not academic, it's very jargon-free, because I want to make ACT and ERP accessible to people. And I think it's primarily for any person who is stuck because of OCD. If a person has recently been diagnosed, they will get the basics. If a person is in the middle of treatment, they can augment or skills. If a person has done successful treatment, they're in recovery, and they need a refresher, they could also benefit, right? And the whole curriculum is really focusing on ACT and ERP for OCD.
Awesome. Well, let us know when it's out so we can post it here at Gamechangers. And we will also, for anyone watching, if you've just tuned in and you want to see the rest of this, it will be on our Gamechangers page on Facebook. And I will also be putting it up on YouTube probably sometime in the next few days. And lastly, before we end, are there any final thoughts that you want to give our community just on recovery or hope or just any of that good stuff?
Thank you for asking that, and thank you again for having me. That was
of course.
Thank you. I know that this is a year 2020 that we won't forget. It has shaped all of us in so many ways. Our physical space has been restricted for the first time in a way that we didn't know was coming. And I think I want to invite everyone who is watching this to remember to be gentle with yourself, to remember that we are doing the best we can. And gentleness is what is going to allow us to keep going with what is coming after the pandemic or getting out of the pandemic. So that will be my biggest advice, to remember that every day there is a moment for us to be gentle with ourselves. We don't have to push ourselves everything. We don't have to judge ourselves for how we feel. But gentleness with ourselves and with our bodies is going to allow us to keep going.
Thank you. That's a perfect way to end this. I know that things are really confusing all over the world right now. And with that said, just so you know, I know we've taken a little bit of a break from the fireside chats. I think we are going to kick those back up in the next couple of weeks. And so I think it's really an important time to have support. And I echo what you say. Be gentle with yourself, and also you be gentle with yourself, and I will try as well with myself. And thank you so much for being here. Thank you for all that you do. We're really, really lucky to have you in our community. And I just appreciate your energy, and you know, I feel inspired just talking to you and wanting to do more to help others. So thank you so much.
Well, thank you so much, Chrissy, and the feeling is mutual.
And for all of you who joined us today, thank you so much. This has been so fun. I appreciate your support. I always appreciate getting messages from you as well. And so we will have a fireside chat scheduled for sometime in the next week or two. If not, then join us in 2 weeks. We are going to have Morgan and Molly from Not Alone Notes. Yay! For the Monday Mavericks in 2 weeks from today. So thanks for being here. Please take care of yourself. Like Dr. Z said, be gentle with yourselves. Know that you're not alone. We're walking alongside of you. And check out our OCD Game Changer space or page for more information and resources as we try to post as much as we can to raise awareness for people doing incredible work in this community. So thank you very much. Have a great day. We'll see you soon.
Thank you so much. Bye, guys.